You're listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast. Each week we talk to people just like you who share stories of God's faithfulness. Today I sit down with Renee Booe. Y'all know Renee. She's a friend of the podcast, and you can go back and listen to our last conversation we had back in January. I'll make sure and link it in the show notes. You know, we talked back then about goals because it was at the beginning of January, and just being healthy, mind, body, and spirit, so that we are fit to fulfill our purpose on this earth. Renee also shared her own struggles with body image, comparison, insecurities, and her own journey to learning her worth and value in the kingdom. Y'all, it was so good. And I'm just so thankful for her vulnerability in sharing her story with us. In fact, after we wrapped up that conversation, we talked about having her on again to do like a wellness check mid-year. So as we head into the summer, that is exactly what we're going to do today. Renee is going to walk us through what it looks like to examine our life, our goals, our thoughts, and actions so that we can keep moving forward in what God is calling us to as we continually become who we are called to be. We talk about holding truth and grace as we self-examine, how to identify underlying issues that may be holding us back, how gratitude changes everything, and the importance of creating declarations that reframe our negative thinking. We even talk about some helpful tools Renee uses to help keep her goals on track throughout the year. So let's get to it. Well, today I have my friend is back in the studio with us today, Renee Booe. Hey, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here today chatting with you.
Very excited to have you back in the studio. And you guys remember Renee, she was a part of a podcast at the beginning of the year where we talked about all kinds of things, about healthy habits, about our thoughts, about just, there are so many things I wrote down. So if you guys missed that episode, you're definitely going to want to go back and listen to that podcast episode, which I will link in the show notes. But today it's like mid-year, just about. And we were talking about this earlier, but the summer is a great time to reset. It's a time to there's a momentum that kind of builds for, it's summertime. The changing seasons, it's just a great time to reevaluate, to look back on what's been, but also to look back at what's still to come. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is just really remembering, what it is that we're thinking, because we know that what we think leads to what we believe, which leads to what we do or don't do. Right?
That's right. Yes, exactly.
And something I love that is a part of your story is that freedom is a journey.
Yeah.
And we know we need freedom in every aspect of our lives, including our health. There are challenges, insecurities, and lies to overcome, but God cares about those things, and He cares about us. And so whatever your health goals are for 2023 or whatever they were, it's time to recheck, right? To check back in. So that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, like a wellness check-in.
Yeah. We talked about this back in January, and after we stopped recording and I looked at Renee, I was like, we have to do this again.
Yes, because you got to come back and revisit it because your wellness journey is ongoing.
Yeah.
Right? And we have January, this just great momentum, and we're all excited. And a lot of times we don't come back and check in. Like, we're supposed to go to our yearly check-ins with our doctors. Most people don't like that. We feel like, I don't want to go. But what if it instead was this like panic, doom, and gloom, but it was more of this, okay, it's a time to reset and evaluate and see where we're at. So that's what we're going to do today, is just together check in and remember what we said we were going to do in January and see how it's going.
Yeah. Well, how is it going for you, Renee? Let's start with you.
Oh, I love that. So January, you get super excited, and I had a lot of goals in wellness, mind, body, and spirit. And I actually got injured. I got injured in March, and a pretty bad injury, to the point where...
It was your back, right?
Yes, I was deadlifting, and I did 3 really great lifts, and the 4th one I pulled, immediately. I was on the ground like, we're in trouble.
This is bad.
This is bad. And we go to Disney World in a week. This is really bad. And that was, first of all, hard mentally, because I had set some goals. Like, one of my goals, my overarching goal, and we can talk about this later of the way to set goals, but my overarching goal is to be the healthiest version of myself this year. And I set underneath small markers for that goal. And one of those goals is a pull-up. Well, in order to get a pull-up, you have to be doing strength work consistently for a while. And that goal, I mean, I barely could walk. I remember trying to walk just down to the trash can and back after I hurt my back. I couldn't. I was crying and in pain. So what I've had to do this, and now I'm better. I'm better, but I'm
praise
still,
God,
I'm in
yeah.
a different place. So my goals, point being, I had to do a little shifting. Like my goals had to shift. Okay, so the healthiest version of myself right now isn't someone who can do a pull-up. Right now, she's someone who's stretching for 45 minutes, who wasn't stretching from January to March, which probably is why I have a back injury. And so I had to humble myself and reevaluate my goals and figure out what could I do to still work towards that overarching healthiest version of myself with this injury. So it's been hard and challenging because I had to slow down, but I have learned a lot about why I actually pursue health. Right now, pull-up would be great, but just being able to walk.
That's great
Like
too.
God just he used that to be like, oh, now remember when you couldn't walk to the trash can, and now I walk to the trash can, taking the trash out, and I am so grateful for a body that can move. And I've said that before in the past, but having an injury that takes you out really changes the game. So that's really where I'm at, is just taking a new pace, a new rhythm to the same goal of the healthiest version of myself. It just looks different.
Yeah. So let's talk about what could, someone has established their goals. We're here at the mid-year. They want to reevaluate. They want to do a reset. They want to examine, okay, how have the last 6 months gone?
Yeah.
How do we avoid the shame, the guilt, the regret, those kinds of things if they start to creep in? Because none of us can do all of our goals perfectly. I mean, life happens, and it's okay when life does happen. But what is the thing that someone can do as they go into that step of reevaluating? How can they prevent the voice of shame, discouragement, the lies that will start to creep in, the negativity that could creep in when they look back and go, well, yeah, my goals looked a lot different than I thought at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. So that's the first thing, is just to notice when you are reevaluating your goals, which is a good thing to do. That's why we're doing this, is first start by reevaluating. Where did I say I wanted to be? Where am I at? And the first voice that will usually come for us is that shame if I'm not doing what I thought I would. So recognizing that and just not participating with it. Like, I refuse to participate that in the name of Jesus. Like, we're not going to do that. Even speak that. Like, nope, I'm not going to receive that. And I would start looking at what is working. What have you been doing? Even if it's small, let's say we're talking about health and you wanted to add more healthy habits and you've actually been drinking your water to the point where you don't even really track it anymore. Start counting fruit of what is working. Get your brain to stop thinking about the negative, because that's where it wants to go. Our enemy wants to shame us and our brain's trying to find the negative. And so we're going to start partnering with truth and declaring, this is working. This is working. So for me, it was like, I'm not lifting heavy weights and I can't even run anymore. I'm still where I can't run, but what is working? I'm still doing X, Y, and Z, and starting to count fruit. That is the first thing I would suggest when you are reevaluating, to avoid the shame.
That's good. And how often do you reevaluate? We talked about this earlier because you and I are different on reevaluating. So how many times do you reevaluate?
Okay, I love it that you bring it up, because I want people to hear that there's differences in how people do this. So I know some people will only reevaluate like once a year. I reevaluate once a month. I really love the end of the month and the beginning of the month. So the end of the month, like the last day, I sit and I just do this. I'm like, all these things that I accomplished and all of these things that worked really well and what I'm proud of, and even just happy moments with my family, because that keeps me well, right? My mental wellness is like this fun event with my kids. I kind of go through all of those things of what was working and what I enjoyed on the end of a month. And then that next day, I'll break it up to like, okay, what do I want to focus on this month? And for me, that's because I have young kids, life changes a lot. And so it helps me be like, I have overarching goals, big goals, but like, I can't always do them in every month.
Right.
So that helps me not to get frustrated. I do it once a month. But you were saying...
Yeah, I was saying I do it probably once a quarter.
Yeah.
Would be probably the most that I would probably do that in a year.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying, that as far as when we look back on what has been, to include that part of gratitude, right? Because gratitude really does shift the brain to be thinking on the things that are positive and good. And, the word tells us to think about the things that are lovely and pleasing and, all of those kinds of things. And so it goes a long way just to sit back and to count the blessings and to count them in not only our health, but also the other blessings that we see within family, within friendships, within wins at work. I mean,
Yes.
a project that was finally completed. Go you for doing that,
Yeah.
that you worked on something for several months and you finally saw it checked off your to-do list, right? That's a big deal.
And oftentimes we just move past them so
Right.
fast. And so then
Well,
we get
don't
to
celebrate.
Yeah, we get to December and like, oh, I didn't accomplish any of my goals. And what did I really do this year? But if you do it quarterly or monthly or twice a year, you get to savor those moments a little bit more. And it reinforces in your own brain as well. Like, I want to do more of that. Mm-hmm. And it helps us to see the bigger picture of like, oh, actually, again, I'm big about setting overarching goals. So like being an intentional mother, that's really hard to
Qualify.
right. And so when I once a month and being like, I went to my kids' baseball game and then I went to her choir performance and I did this and I was intentional and present. Oh, I am being an intentional mother.
Yeah.
And I can see those if I reevaluate and review and celebrate those versus just going through the motions or doing it and never reviewing it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of power in reviewing and celebrating in your just your own heart and mind. Like, okay, great. I am doing that. That's awesome.
Okay, well, let's talk about the opposite side of this.
Yes.
Let's talk about the part where it's like, okay, there is probably or could probably be a reason why we didn't actually accomplish the goals. And it's not just necessarily life happens. It could be, we talked about a couple of issues earlier. We talked about it could be a mental block that we are experiencing that we didn't know was there, an insecurity that's keeping us from accomplishing those goals. It could be fear. It could be a belief, perfectionism, laziness. I mean, it could be a lot of different things. So how do we identify the thing beneath the thing?
Yeah.
Right? In order to not repeat in the next quarter or the next month what happened in the previous as we're looking back.
Yeah. So Jesus came in both grace and truth, right? And so we give ourselves grace that we don't shame ourselves, but grace without truth doesn't get us anywhere. So we come with honesty and truthfulness of, okay, so what didn't work and why? Mm-hmm. Why was it? And you have to examine your own behavior. Like if you had a goal of, let's say, healthy eating, let's just say I want to eat healthier, or if you got even more clear, like I want to eat within this calorie bracket or these macros, and you didn't. And let's say 90% of the time you didn't. Okay, no shame, but the honesty here is you didn't. Why not? Why not? Was it that you weren't having good systems? Like, did you not meal prep? Did you not outline what you wanted to eat? Or is it your flesh didn't want to? You just decided, I have this plan, but I'm not going to do that. And those are the things you take with the Lord of like, what's going on here? Where's the heart issue? Sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I don't want to choose the healthy food, even though I know I'm called to it. And that's a whole topic for another day. But like, there's sometimes when I'm just being rebellious and like, I'm choosing that because I want to comfort myself today. And instead of going for a prayerful walk, I'm going to eat that food. And there are times when we need to be honest with ourselves and call that out for what it is and confess it and bring it to the light so we can heal it. Mm-hmm, right. And so we have to do the grace, but we have to do the truth as well so that we can move forward in the goals and really the abundant life that Jesus came to give us, right? That health, healing, wholeness, mind, body, spirit comes with being honest with ourselves.
Yeah. And as we continue, it's helpful to remember these 3 questions, which I did not get from Sarah's brain. They came from another podcaster, but hey, here we go. 3 really simple questions to ask yourself as you're evaluating even just your thoughts, as you process and as you do this reset and reevaluate and look to the future. Ask yourself these 3 things. It's so simple. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? So as you are able to think about the thoughts that you're thinking, because we know that what we believe leads to actions. And so but we have the capacity to build new thoughts. We talked about this earlier. Our brain is an incredible, you said it, a computer.
Yes.
Would you go into that a little bit?
Yes. So I love it because it's like psychology, science, and the Bible. We've talked about it last time, Romans 12:2, about being transformed by renewing the way we think. Our brain is a computer. It has a program. We've been programming it since birth. And you have the power because of Christ who lives in you to renew it. But we have to take thoughts captive and make them obedient to Christ, right?
Amen.
And so what program is coming up for you with your health and wellness, right? Like when you're coming to do these things, are you getting this negative thought? I can never do this. I always fail. Look at me. I always say I'm going to do this thing and I never do. And you're feeding those thoughts in your brain, which are causing feelings.
And that's going to grow.
Yes. And they're going to stay stuck and and it's going to cause behaviors, right? And so I've heard this quote by this psychologist is you can't outperform a faulty belief system. So if you're believing these negative toxic things in your computered brain, you're not going to be able to outperform and reach those goals with your thoughts, whether they're negative and self-condemning or whether they're just unbelief, right? A lot of people just don't believe I set these goals, but I've never been able to achieve them. Well, that's a belief. Could you challenge that belief? Yes. Can you reprogram that belief? Yes. That's actually the deeper work that people aren't doing when they set goals. We just focus so much on systems. I'm going to eat this way. I'm going to move this way. I'm going to read this Bible plan. I'm going to do this prayer plan. It's the thing, but we never focus on the beliefs and the thoughts and the identity portion of it. And so that is, if you can start with your thoughts. What am I thinking that's preventing me from getting here? You'll have much more breakthrough and progress in your goals.
All right. So I haven't shared my reevaluation of where I'm at. So I'm going to do that. And then we're going to reframe my negative thinking and you're going to help me.
I love it. Let's do it.
Because I already know where I'm at because the Lord's been speaking to me about perfectionism again. And I'm a 1 on the Enneagram.
Oh, this makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I love this. It's like a live coaching moment. I'm so excited.
Okay. But it took me a while to identify that because I thought I was a 3 for so long because I love to achieve. And so anyways, long story short, I really want to get things right and I want to get them right the first time. And so with goals, let's just take exercising just as the goal that I have personally, that was on my list at the beginning of the year to exercise consistently. Let's take that goal. Okay. I'm reevaluating because that's what this podcast is about, right? So looking back on the reasoning, I mean, yes, life got busy. It was crazy. I didn't really have a lot of margin, but I could have made more margin, right? And so, but I also didn't give myself grace and wasn't as truthful with myself when it came down to the fact that I would go weeks without doing anything. And then I would go into that shame spiral and that guilt spiral. And then within the last probably week, the Lord has brought up this perfectionism thing. And I told the Lord, no, I don't deal with that anymore. You know?
That's not my thing anymore.
That's not my thing anymore. The Lord has redeemed that. And it was like he was able to really show me that, it was showing up in a different form than it had before. And it was showing up like this. It was turning a starting line into a brick wall. Like I kept adding more excuse upon excuse upon excuse upon excuse. And it was like harder to break through just to get going, right? Just to keep going and running that race that the Lord's called me to at the beginning of the year, which was to be more active.
Yeah.
And then with that perfectionism as well, the Lord and I were talking about this, that perfectionism will set unrealistic expectations and impossible time frames.
Yeah.
And gets me to start comparing myself with other people, and sometimes I'm like, I can't do it perfectly right now, so I might as well not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so perfectionism is my thing. So help me identify how to move forward from this point.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, you just self-coached what you did. You just did your own, what we're asking these people to do who are listening is to observe and evaluate. So that was an awesome example if anyone needs to hear that's what it looks like. And she's identified it. It's an all or nothing thinking. And so what I would say is you need to re-evaluate and reframe, like you said, what exercise is. Because for you, it sounds like exercise has to be a certain amount of time and a certain amount of exertion for it to count towards helping your body be mobile. So how can you redefine exercise? What does it look like? So it sounds like it counts for you. Instead of it being a 45-minute workout at a gym, Can exercise be 10 minutes of walking around the block? Could it be getting a yoga mat out and just doing 3 minutes of stretches? And what happens is when we reframe, first of all, we don't feel so bad when we don't do this huge workout. And second, we get momentum. So if you would just do 10 minutes around the block, you're like, oh, I'm going to keep going. But what happens is when we have this just narrow vision of what our goal is, eating healthy is only carrots, broccoli, and chicken. Like if it's so narrow and we can't hit it, we just freeze. And so first redefining what you call exercise, and then just committing to doing something tiny. The all or nothing mentality, I know we've heard it, but it's like, would you go and put holes in all 3 of your tires if one of your tires was flat? No. One of the things I like is if I've declared in the morning, I'm not going to explode on my kids at all. Like I'm just not going to do it. And then something happens and my kid did the one thing I asked him not to do in the morning and I yell. I'm like, oh, don't do that. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? I said I wasn't going to yell today, but I did it first thing in the morning. So I'm going to yell all day long. We would never do that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an all or nothing mentality is just something that we have to learn to recognize and then fight against it. So the next time you're like, I'm going to work out, and then something happened to your schedule and you can't because life happened, you're like, no, I'm going to get on that mat and stretch for 5 minutes. No, I'm going to do 10 push-ups and 10 air squats. And then you celebrate. We talked about that last time, I think.
Yeah,
You
we
do
did.
the tiny thing, and then you're like, woo, good job, Sarah. I did it. And that, I promise, it sounds so simple, but that will help you break through that all or nothing mindset.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question that goes a little bit deeper. So developed or identified the all or nothing mindset. We're going to reframe the way we define exercise. So let's take it a step further and help me write a declaration, something that I can remember that's simple, easy to remember, that I can just, like, when I'm in that spot or in that mode where I'm having to adjust my normal for something that I can fit into my schedule, what's something quick that I can, like, just remember or write down somewhere,
I love this because I have one too.
Okay, good.
I connect declarations with who I want to be, but I say I am that person. So this might sound really silly. I don't know if any of you have seen is it Hemsworth? The guy who plays Thor? Forgive me for not knowing. He has a documentary on Disney Plus about just extremely extreme levels of health and stress and just taking his health to the next level. And so one of my silly declarations is, I protect my health Thor style. Like, I know that's super silly and that's not very spiritual, but like that show just impacted me on the way he went like the next level to take care of his health. And so that's one of my declarations is I am someone who, and I protects my health because I'm not trying to be healthy. I'm protecting the health that I have for my 80-year-old self. And so that's one I use. And so I would say as we work on this for you, who do you want to be? As we speak, how Jesus called people by who they were in him and gave them new names, you are Sarah and you are a healthy mom who works out because she wants to be fit for her call or whatever it is. But who you are, even you don't think you are that person now, who do you want to be? And let's call you up every day in your declaration. So it's connected to working out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And physical health.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's shift gears and let's think about the listener who it doesn't, what they're reevaluating right now doesn't have to do with their health. Let's go to another area.
Yeah.
Maybe let's go to the area of time. Okay. Time is a very important commodity that we don't often think too much about, but it's a good thing to think about how we use our time, right? Because we are only given so much.
Yes.
So much a day, so much a week, so much a month, so much a year. So we're both mothers. Let's think about the time we spend as moms, because a lot of our listeners are mothers, or fathers, their parents. And so we're thinking about the ways that we spend time with our family.
Yeah.
And so I know that for me, I've been looking through and asking that question, am I spending my time wisely? Doing a time check in the sense of just asking myself, am I all in? Am I really invested when I'm with my children or my husband or even any other relationship that is valuable to me, a family member? a friend, am I all there, or am I distracted? So let's identify and let's talk about that for just a moment. Let's help someone who might be struggling with using their time wisely.
We go with the declarations, and I think, okay, so we all could probably use our time better. So again, we're going to start with taking that shame off, okay? Mm-hmm. We're taking it off, and we're going to evaluate, how are you using your time, right? With the grace and truth method. And there are probably times as I'm sitting here, I'm on my phone, whether it's doing work, right? Or just fun when my kids are here. But at the beginning of the year, again, talk about that overarching umbrella of my goals. I want to be a present and intentional mom. That's one of my goals. And so, stepping back and thinking, how can I declare that over myself? Even when you step into the moment at the baseball game, like our goals don't have to be the monthly or quarterly. It can be a daily thing when you step into that environment. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm at the baseball game and it'd be really easy for me to check my emails and log into this program here. But I said at the beginning of the year, I want to be an intentional and present parent. So I'm going to do that today, right now in this moment. Like in my car, before I get out and go to that game, I am an intentional and present parent. And just that little declaration is you're speaking life and truth over yourself. You're setting that intention for your day. You're rewiring your brain and you go and live that out. So whatever your year, regardless of whatever January through whatever this comes out has looked like, today, when you're listening to this podcast today, you get to reset that goal and set that intention for yourself in this moment.
Yeah, I love a quote. I'm just remembering this because I'm on a John Acuff kick, y'all. Okay, so he says this: regretting that you didn't start earlier is a great distraction from moving on your dream today. And the reality is that today is earlier than tomorrow. So
that fits perfectly.
I'm hearing you say is that no matter what it is that you're reevaluating, whatever goal it is, that the same principles apply. We reevaluate. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to, shut the voice of the negativity and the shame and not listen to that. But, choose both grace and truth, walking in both grace and truth, and then identify and remember what our goals were and see if they need to be adjusted. Because we talked about this earlier. Like, there are times when, maybe that goal was not our goal. Yes. We said it and it wasn't necessarily something God called us to.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we pick up other people's goals at the beginning of the year because everyone's doing this and that. And so when you're reevaluating, I think that's a big thing is like, is this goal still for me from the Lord?
That's a good question to ask.
Yeah. And also, is this still something I want?
Yeah.
A lot of times we set these goals and you're like, I one time set the goal to do the splits because it's a reason to stretch, right?
Yeah.
Like just stretching seems boring, but I'm going to stretch so I can do the splits. And I realized, you know what? I don't actually care if I can do the splits. So now I'm going to stretch so I can always touch my toes.
There you
right?
go.
But like I had to reevaluate that goal because it wasn't something I really wanted.
Yeah.
But asking the Lord, are these still goals for me? Reevaluating for yourself and also your season.
Yeah.
Because we're getting ready to shift into summer. And whenever you're listening to this is evergreen in the sense of like, a new season's coming, whether it's fall or Christmas. Does the goal I set for myself need to shift? Does it need to pull back? It doesn't mean you quit, but am I pulling back or am I pushing forward because I have more time? And that will help you set you up for success and not get frustrated based on your season. Again, this is why we evaluate, why we take that time.
Yeah. And take that time with the Lord. Something you said last time that I want to circle back around to is take the confusion away and go to the source. Like, do this with the Holy Spirit. Ask him what is best for me today and in the days ahead. So listen to him and go where he tells you to go. Do what he tells you to do because he knows you far better than you know yourself. He made you. He made all of us. And in him are the answers that we long for and need. He holds all wisdom, right?
Yes.
And so it's that place of surrender. Surrender again. I mean, that is just something the Lord keeps reminding me of in particular is there's always an invitation to surrender more deeply, right? In places of things I might be holding on to longer than I should, or, I don't mean to should myself because I do not like that word. So I'm not trying to should anyone, okay?
Sure.
But I want, his mercies are new every day, and I'm so thankful for that. And I want to look more like Jesus each and every day. And so I think asking ourselves these questions and reevaluating, now I'm thinking, well, do I need to do this every single month? Because maybe I'm not doing it enough. I'll have to go to him and ask. But okay, we've talked a lot about overarching goals.
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's go there before we land this plane. So how do you How many do you have? And how do you define and know these are my overarching goals? How does someone figure that out?
That's really good. So I have like categories of goals and they're overarching. So like parenting, health, my spiritual growth, my personal growth. And so those are kind of my overarching. And they're usually the overarching. I'm doing, if you were in the studio, you could see like I have my hand like an umbrella over my head of who I want to be. So
Sure.
overarching is who I want to be. And so I want to be an intentional mother. Well, it's hard to like quantify that. And so I'll take the overarching, I want to be an intentional mom. And then I will set goals, but they're not yearly goals. So some months I'll say, I'm turning my phone off at 6 p.m. And that's how I'm going to be an intentional mother. Well, that works great for certain seasons, but other seasons it doesn't. So those tiny little micro
That's
goals,
good. Yeah.
I reset those every month. That's why I look at the month. Okay, so I want to be a present mother. What are the micro goals? I want to be the healthiest version of myself. That's my overarching umbrella. What are my micro goals? In January, I was going to the gym 6 times a week. Then I got injured. Now it's summer and it's also going to look different. So going to the gym 6 times a week is those tiny goals, but they're going to have to switch to I'm walking 3 days a week. And so I love the overarching goals because it helps me to have just vision for my life.
Sure.
The Bible talks about without vision, the people perish. And so I want overall vision for my marriage. I am an amazing wife who champions her husband,
Yeah.
right? Like that's my intention. And some days, some months, I'm like really focused on, cultivating our marriage. And then other times I have to, we're not there. So
Yeah.
if you have this I keep saying that the same, but like these just themes of your life of where you want to grow and be intentional.
And who you want to become
who
and
you want to
be.
be.
Yeah.
Connect it to who you want to be, who God made you to be. From
good.
glory to glory, we're constantly
We're always becoming.
Becoming. I love the
Yeah.
word. That's actually one of my words this year is becoming
good.
and being okay with that.
Yeah.
And so if you're frustrated with your goals, you find yourself like, I've made no progress anywhere. Maybe go to this place of these themes in your life that God has given you, your parenting or your job. Maybe you're taking care of a parent, whatever it is. And who do you want to be in those places? So start there and then just pick little habits that you can do to cultivate that. And I think that's where you'll find success in reaching your goals long term.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I've got one more question for you.
Yes.
Do you have any tools that you use to help you like map out these goals, keep these goals in front of your, in front of your eyes, in front of your mind? Do you have tools that you use that you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah. So one of them, I think it's called Power Sheets. I think that's where I got the monthly.
I've heard of these.
Yes, and if we can link it, I think they're
I will
called
link
Power
it, yeah.
Sheets. That's why I have monthly, because it's a monthly review.
Okay.
And there's a tending sheet, so you write your monthly goals, your weekly and daily, and there's little check boxes. So the people that love to do that,
Type A.
yes, those are so pretty. And so I've had those for like 6 or 7 years. I actually don't have them this year because I've got that in such a rhythm, and I actually have my own journaling prompt like download actually that I made, which maybe I can link for your people too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I call it the it's like a morning mindset. And every morning, so I evaluate once a month, but every morning I'm setting my intention. So every morning I am writing what I'm grateful for. Every morning I'm writing who God is. Because if I don't know who God is, then I can't remember who I am.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
And so I'm writing my goals. I'm sorry, not my goals. My gratitude list, who God is, and then who I want to be. So those I am an intentional mom statements. And then I'm writing my goals, my specific, like today I'm drinking 80 ounces of water. And I do that every day. So every day I'm renewing my mind with this is who I said I want to be. And so I see it. Now I say every day, that's my goals. There are days I miss because I'm not perfect, but I refuse to fall into all or nothing. So even if I'm doing it once a week, those are the two tools I use to keep it in front of me. Because we got a lot of stuff and information in our brain. So I after quiet time with Jesus and praying, sit down and remind myself, the Renew Mindset Journal, this is who I want to be. So I can get that link to you if you want. People want to download it, they can. Or it's seriously just you do it on your own. Just write it in a journal, those little prompts.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today about health and mental health, spiritual, all of it, because we are whole human beings, body, mind, and spirit. And the Lord cares about the things that that we care about and the things that help us make sure that we are fit to fulfill our purpose here on this earth. And I just am so thankful. You are an inspiration to so many. And I want to ask you guys out there, are you ready to thrive? Are you ready to continue to living the life that God has called you to live? And if so, then let's take a reset. Let's take a few minutes, a few moments, maybe even do it right after the end of this podcast and just ask a few questions. What are some, maybe like just a few short questions someone could just start off with just to reevaluate as we wrap up?
Yeah, real quick, just like what's working? What's working with what I said I wanted to do? What's not working? Why is it not working? Get honest. What do I want to focus on? Who do I want to be?
That's good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Renee.
My pleasure. I'm so excited to hear everyone and have them reset and just keep going and living well and free for the rest of 2023.
I love Renee. Isn't she just the best? Y'all, she's such a joy to have as a guest on the podcast. So I encourage you, follow her if you don't already, and maybe, let her know how much it's meant to you for her to share her journey with us and just the knowledge and wisdom that the Lord has imparted to her in this area. You can go find out more information about her and all the resources and links mentioned in the conversation today in our show notes. Thanks so much for listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast. We hope you'll have an amazing day. And remember, God is always moving, and He's moving in your life too, beyond Sundays.